is to celebrate a great lady. So my job is to lighten up the mood. So I'm going to tell you my stories. My mother was a storyteller. My father is a storyteller. My brothers and sisters try to be storytellers, but none of them beats me. Okay. Dr. Praxedes Kituuka was prayerful. I say this in church, and I'll explain to you why. Dr. Kituuka, from the time I could remember, always prayed her prayer, which I said in church. And she also taught me my guardian angel. Now, I'm a very cantankerous person. She has a car behind there called Land Rover Discovery 3. There was a time it had a problem, and we ended up having to go to take it by car carrier to Kenya. And then when it came out of the garage, the cantankerous me said driving it back to Kampala at 9 p.m. So we drive with my Firabulago, a gentleman called David Mwanda. I'm not so sure if he's here. But if you think I'm lying, you ask him. David Mwanda also has a wife called Anita Naviri Mwanda, who is also, I think, as prayerful as my wife, as my mother. So, as we went along, David's wife was calling him and telling him, you better be back here tomorrow morning. My brother Anthony, whose house we had just left, he was staying in Nairobi that time. He looked at us and said, you foolish guys, where are you going? And I said, man, we have been in Nairobi for too long. We have to get back. Our businesses are dying. You see, for us businessmen, women are not at the shop. Nothing gets sold. So we started driving. And the car was fine. It had been repaired properly. And we get to a point between Nakuru and Eldoret. Those people who know the Kenyan countryside, there's a place called Burnt Forest or Black Forest. It is dark. All of a sudden, the axle of this repaired car in the middle of the dark broke. We could see nothing. You just assume all these lights are off. It was like that. No car coming, no car going. And the car just stopped. At that point, I remembered my mother's prayer, my guardian angel, to whom God's love commits me here. Ever this day, be at my side, to light and guide, to rule and guide me. Amen. And that is my prayer. So, I prayed. David said, my wife has prayed for me. And I also know that I am here because although I'm not the greatest of prayers, or people who pray, my mother always prayed for me. So before I left and told her I was on my way, she said, I am praying for you. So luckily, David is also a mechanic of some sort. So he looked and said, you know what? Put this car in one and drive it slowly. It was dark. The car was not moving around over 5 kilometers an hour because the axle was broken. And out of nowhere, we found a petrol station. And again I say, my guardian angel was looking out for me. Out of nowhere, this petrol station where there's one pump and one light. So we stop and we park at that petrol station. Then the guard at that petrol station knew a taxi guy. So he called him from, I don't know where he came from, but he came from the bushes. He puts us in his car and we drive 80 kilometers to Eldoret. We get to Eldoret, we spend the night. My guardian angel was looking out for me. We spent the night. The next morning, the big shots showed up. That time, Anthony was a big shot in equity in Nairobi. So we were able to get a breakdown, tickets to the Prestige Center in Eldoret. And I gave the key to the topmost man and told him that there's a big man this is his car, you first keep it for us. And because David was on a clock, we drove from Eldoret to Malaba, spent the night in Tororo, next morning, came to town. But then we were able to call RMA in Nairobi. They came, picked the car, brought it back. All those things are times when my guardian angel saved me. This mother of mine, as a businessman, I call her the wind beneath my wings. Many of us, you look at us and you think we are successful. You think we are always doing fine. I was very amused to no end when I saw DFCU at St. Mabogo. Many years ago, I was a very serious defaulter in DFCU. For a whole year. But all that time, whenever I was about to be taken down, my guardian angel would swoop in. The last story I'm going to tell you is about my daughter. Or my daughters. They'll hit me for this one. We moved them to a not-so-cheap school, and we didn't have any money. I came convinced my guardian angel and her husband that, you know what, this is needed. And he looked at me and told me, you man, of all my children, you. And my guardian angel just asked me one question. And for this, I thank my wife. She said, what does your wife think? And the one person who outside my guardian angel has kept me alive is my wife. Because whenever I would come up with these harebrained ideas, my mother's only question was, what does Rachel think? And she always used to say, but you have a good wife. Don't mess around. Because no other lady will go through the things you take your wife through. Not a single one. And I can attest, and she can tell you. So we went to this not-so-cheap school in 2012. And we stayed there until 2020. And this not-so-cheap school used to charge in dollars. And every term, I never used to see teachers. Why didn't I see teachers? Because if you don't pay school fees on time, you don't see teachers. But ever so often, my guardian angel would come and say, nah, my son, how are you doing today? Come and see me. And I go there. My friends, Dr. Twino used to say, I normally go there to drink milk. I said, why do you keep coming to drink milk? Call Chiwano. And whenever I would come, Twino would smile. Anyway, my guardian angel and a lot of her people kept me alive. And they kept me alive for 8 years. In 2020, Seed One, who is the only of her grandchildren, who is currently unavailable, she's in the air. She lands at 10 p.m. So after speaking to you here, I'm going to pick her up. Seed One got a scholarship to go to Italy under the United World Colleges. But what was even more interesting was after all these years of toil, not seeing teachers, having people ask you, why don't you come? You know, I'm not afraid to say, these schools are expensive, not easy to pay school fees for. And headmasters and principals calling you and saying, why are you still around? This school is too expensive for you. And I used to tell them that, by the way, my children are going to get scholarships. Seed One, who I'd call her, I'd prefer to call her, got the scholarship to go to UWC Adriatic somewhere in Trieste in Italy. And guess what? From a man who was suffering to pay fees with wind beneath his wings, they said, we shall pay for you everything. And I said, man, that was the last time I think I cried. Because it just showed me how many people put effort together to get me to where I got. Anyway, COVID comes. Italy is hit badly. But the people of UWC were very good to us, and they said, we can't take you to Italy. Choose another campus, we shall take you, and we shall give you the same terms. So we ended up going to UWC in Moshi, East Africa. And my seed one goes there, did this very hard course called um, uh, IB, International Baccalaureate. Those who know, it's not the simplest of courses. She suffered year one. Then year two, she found her feet. And I also began to appreciate the kind of education she was doing. So me, I was, I remember whenever I would tell my mother, she would always call, and even in the time she was sick, her biggest concern was, how is my daughter? Meaning her granddaughter. You tell her she has to work. She has to work because for my mother, till the day she got the stroke on a Sunday morning. On Friday, on Saturday, she had been in the plaza. The plaza people can attest. At the good young age of 75, she was still working. So her message to my children is that you should always work. Anyway, back to my story. Seed one goes and applies for university. And she applied to 10 universities in the United States. Those who know how expensive those things are will tell you. I will not go into that. However, that young girl got 8 scholarships. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for universities which agreed to take her. And I currently pay no school fees for her. So when I tell you, or when I tell my friends that she was and still is the wind beneath my wings, I am really telling you that she's the one who did the heavy lifting, who always picked me up when I was down, who always found a way to keep me going. So while many are sad, she has left me in what I believe is a better place. And for that, I am truly grateful. At the time when she fell sick, she found us at a time when there was no amount of money we would not have spent on her. She had 4 nurses full-time, 2 during the day, 2 during the night. She had 2 physiotherapists coming in and out. As my father said, we have an ICU here somewhere, and we don't even know how we got to get it, but every gadget you can think of is there. And also, because she gave us time from the time she got her stroke up to the time when she finally passed, she told us, all of us, what she thought about us. And sometimes she could be brutal. She was like, you boys, you think in English. For us, we think in Lunyoro. By the way, in my life, I'd taken very long without listening to her speaking in Lunyoro, but she spoke in Lunyoro, and she was telling us what she thought. And she picked up everybody and told them their thing. So when you see us strong here, just know we spoke to her and God gave us extra time. And for that, we can only be grateful. Before I finish, I'm passing back a favor. Now, there's this brother of mine. Yesterday, he said a few things. But I will tell you about my mother and him. My brother here has a wife. He knows himself. And as I said, my mother could be brutal. So my brother used to have this friend who he used to call part of the gang. Come here, have lunch, go away, whatever. And she used to frequent, and he was always with her, hanging around, going out places, blah, blah, blah. And my mother observed him over some time, finished second year, third year. They finished graduating. He was still gallivanting. And then she observed. I will use a very crude term the Kenyans have, which says, in Swahili, it says, mwenye haja aende choo. Those who understand is that if you're the one who wants to go to the toilet, you're the one who goes. It doesn't come to you. So this mother of mine sat my brother down and said, Mister, this nonsense of you having friends, it's not time for having friends. You be serious. If you are committing, commit. If you're not committing, get off the toilet. Go. They have been happily married for 19 years. To be continued tomorrow. Thank you. And my mother, the wind beneath my wings, the person who brought me up and brought me to this level. I don't know why my father keeps thinking I bring elephants. The things I do these days are a bit more complicated. They're more complicated than my brothers think they do. I'm building a digital bank. So I know there are many bankers here. I will teach you one thing or the other. So, although I find it very hard explaining to him these things of how you lend money on online platforms and things like that, one day we shall sit down and I'll take him slowly, process by process. But as I say, thank you. This evening is about celebrating Dr. Praxedes Kituuka. We are all sorry. We are all mourning. We are all hurt. But the love she shared with all of you, all her grandchildren, they are here. We only have good memories. And if you do not know it, she lived a life that I don't think anybody else can emulate. She wasn't perturbed by money. She didn't care. She wasn't perturbed. She used to work. After a certain point in time, her thing was, I am working so that I can go for the cruise. And when the money increased, she started doing 2 cruises. When the money increased, sometimes she'd even do 3 or 4. And they went everywhere. So she enjoyed herself. And whenever she would go, she'd call her grandchildren and say, you people come and I tell you. So for me, as I told my father and my brothers, the only problem currently is I'm broke. But if I was not broke, I'd be a nuisance. But so thank you for listening to me. To be continued.